All right, I'm back. And I hope that you're ready to start lesson 1 of the Life Talks dating course. Well, in this lesson, Dr. Dollar is going to debunk some common myths about dating and finding the one. Dating has almost become a lot like window shopping. We don't take the time to invest to know somebody and give up at the first sight of someone else. But it's so far from that. Dating is really about finding a compatible partner who is seeking God as much as you are and staying true to yourself. Now, I've heard it said that dating without the intention of marriage is like going to the grocery store without any money. You'll either leave disappointed or pick up something that doesn't belong to you. You go in there with paper towels and walk out with a baby. You don't have no kids. Enough about me. Let's see what Dr. Dollar has to say.
And hopefully spend time with this tonight. I want to share 10 principles with you tonight. And then tomorrow I want to share you the 10 principles that Taffy and I used. And, she's on her way to South Africa, so I sat her down and said, help me to understand some of the things that we use. We dated 3.5 years. And there's something I think can be learned from it. And the first thing I want to establish, the difference between date and dating. I mean, there's a difference between a date and dating. A date is going to the movie maybe with somebody of the opposite sex or having coffee with somebody of the opposite sex. But dating is when it's a little bit more intimate. It's where you start asking questions. It's where you are now seeing how vulnerable you can become. And so I want you to understand the difference as we talk tonight between a date and dating, okay? So now it's all right if you want to go on a date, but then make sure you understand the difference between I'm dating someone and I went on a date, okay? So the number one thing I mentioned to you, I think last week, is this whole idea of I am looking for the one. How many have heard that there's the one perfect person that I am looking for? I don't want to, bust your bubble, but there's no such thing as the one. Because you're looking for this perfect person that does not exist. You're looking for someone that has no flaws. You're looking for someone that, is going to be my perfect match. Only one person for me. I'm gonna reject everybody else that comes my way except the one. And I'm telling you, it does not exist. All right, now, if I disappointed you and you need a minute to let this sink in, then when you get back, I'm going to tell you the same thing. It does not exist. All right, you got marriage isn't as much about finding someone totally compatible as it is about committing to someone despite their difficulties and despite their differences. Okay. So what you want to make sure you understand, when you say the one, you say that you're trying to find this perfect person, and discovering one flaw means that it's time to move on. And so be careful how you look at the one with no flaws. Don't do it like that. I want you to have the attitude that just simply says the brokenness that you have in yourself and the brokenness that you see in somebody else, it's okay, because it's going to point the both of you to the only perfect one, and that's God. Okay? So we're looking, marriage is not about finding this flawless person. It's about seeing that you can be committed even when somebody is different and somebody has some different things going on in their life. Okay? So the brokenness in a marriage should point you to the only perfect one, and that's God. Well, are we talking about marriage or are we talking about dating? We're talking about dating, but I want you to understand that dating with a direction towards marriage is what we need to please understand that that's what you're supposed to be doing. It's like, dating without a trajectory towards marriage is like going to the grocery store with no money. What's the point? You're going to either leave out disappointed or leave out with something you're not supposed to have. Okay? So, think about what I'm saying. If you're going to go on a date, that's one thing, but dating without a direction, towards marriage, I mean, you know, you've got to have a purpose in this whole deal. There's no benefit in purposeless dating, none whatsoever. So if you are a Christian, there's no reason to date without direction towards marriage. And it's okay to have that. Like I said, a date is not dating. A date is not dating. If you're satisfied with going to get the coffee, and if you're satisfied with going out to the movies, that's fine. But casual or purposeless dating has no benefit for Christians. We are intentional beings, and we are designed to know why we do stuff and where we're going, and dating is no different. Okay? Intentional beings, why we do what we do and where we're going. Now please don't get weird on me, don't get freaky on me. Dating with a direction towards marriage doesn't mean you only date one person forever. All right? That would be awesome, but it's not always realistic. So, you know, you might get into a relationship with someone who loves Jesus, and then you meet the values that that person has. And I mean, this dude, you know, might get into cuddling dogs. Well, that's a deal breaker with you, okay? So if you choose not to get coffee or watch a movie with the opposite sex, then, you know, whatever, but don't place that expectation on other people. So, the one that doesn't exist. If you're gonna date towards marriage. Have a direction that you're participating in. All right, number 3, this is interesting. Don't date non-Christians. I would think people know that, but I'm finding with this new philosophy in the world today and all of these weird things that are going on, you have to kind of give people, you know, a reminder. Don't date non-Christians. I mean, the ultimate purpose of marriage is sanctification. That means, you know, becoming just like God. So my question is, how does dating a non-Christian aid you in this? If you are a Christian, God isn't a piece of your pie. He is the whole pie. So why date someone who doesn't even have God as the piece of the pie? I mean, it just doesn't work out. I mean, my wife loves the Lord, and I can say with all certainty that I wouldn't be, you know, the man that I am today if it were not for her. And even when I was dating her, she was a Christian and I was a Christian, and it just works out. I mean, without a Christian spouse, you will either drift away from God or you'll make your spouse a kind of like a functional God, and you don't want to do that. And so, date Christian people. Don't date non-Christians. Don't date non-Christians with the attitude, I can change them. They're too fine for me not to try to change them. Okay? You don't want to do that. And that leads to number 4, and it is this. You got to have a list of values, and you can't compromise them. You got to have a list of values, and you can't compromise those values. And so when you look at your values, what are your values like? You know, I've seen a lot of compromise in the body of Christ of recent years. Just a lot. That sometimes Christian people they forget they're Christians. I guess, I don't know what the deal is, but we cannot compromise those values that we have. Have a list of values. And if you hadn't written those values down, write them down. What are your values? So when you meet people, you'll know what those values are all about. If you have no idea what values are important to you in a future spouse, you know, you need to just exit the road to marriage and get off on the next exit, because you've got to have some values. Now, when you form this list, don't be legalistic. If you don't have a list, I'm telling you to get a list. Don't be legalistic in it. Don't sit somewhere down on the first date, sit somebody down on the first day and then make them feel like they're at an interview. Make sure they meet all your qualities. And tomorrow I'll be talking to you about, you know, you can ask questions so you'll know who you're with. But certain questions, you don't need to be asking all the way. Like, when I taught on the 1,000 questions, I don't expect for you to ask 1,000 questions on the first date. You're going to run people away. You're going to be weird. What's your social security number? None of your business. Okay? I got to find out if I even like you. Start off with a little, something a little less. What's your favorite color? What's your middle name? And move into it slowly, because you're going to know when you sit down with somebody whether or not you just got to have a right vibe. And if you don't have the right vibe, you're not going to want to see that person anymore. I mean, he may say something that just what did you just say? And you're like, oh no. And tomorrow I'll talk to you about how to remove yourself from that situation. I'll talk to you about how to show up and be prepared if something goes wrong. And I'll talk to you about how important it is to make sure you give some, in other words, I'm going to give you some security that you need to take care of before you go on the first date with somebody you don't know. Leave the phone number with somebody, let somebody know where you're going, what time you left the house, when you're getting there, and all that kind of stuff. Call them when you get in the car. So if somebody needs to come to your rescue, they can come to your rescue, amen? You might be with Henry the weirdo, and you don't want to do that. All right? So your list of values are very, very important. Primary values are probably, going to be deal breakers. For example, if you are in the missions work, and that's a primary value, and you meet somebody who they're not very interested in missions work, that may be a deal breaker, a primary value. But then a secondary value may be you might be a Falcons fan, and they may be a Packers fan, okay? You can kind of get away with that a little bit, okay? So primary values are very, very important. Have a list of your values. And then secondary values, I want 5 kids. I don't want but 2. I don't want but none. That might fall in between all those values, okay? That's something you need to talk about. When I was dating Taffy, we failed to do that. And when we got married, I'm like, all right, let's talk about having kids. She said, having kids, I don't want any kids. So Taffy was like, you don't want kids? And I'm like, well, yeah, I want kids. We should have asked that question and talked about that before we got married. I love my kids and it's all good, but if I had to do it all over again, I would have listened to my wife. Okay? The thing we are celebrating is that the last kid went to college 2 weeks ago, so we have the whole house to ourselves to play cops and robbers, and we are just really good, all right?